let's talk about where things stand right now in the fight against the coronavirus and the challenges with China as well. We're joined by the man in charge of the coronavirus task force, Vice President Mike Pence. Mr. Vice President, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brett.
Why is it so important to open up schools this fall?
Well, we had a very important summit today, a good conference call with the nation's governor, and President Trump's made it clear as we open up America again, we need to open up America's schools. And from early on in this pandemic, the CDC has been giving guidance on how we can safely mitigate and operate schools. New guidance was issued last week, but I must tell you that that parents around America, teachers around America, and we trust leaders all across this country are going to continue to work, continue to find ways to open our schools up again. The good news is 47 states have already issued plans and guidance for doing just that, and we're going to continue to work very closely with them. We just think it is important to get America back to work. It is important to get our kids back to school, and all of that can be done as we continue to make sure that states that are seeing rising cases have the testing, the personal protective equipment, and have the medicines to be able to confront this pandemic, even as we open up America again.
You know, the president said today, Mr. Vice President, that he was going to pressure the governors to open if they didn't. I just want to ask you what that looks like. If the governors, as what happened with the lockdown, make their own individual decisions based on what their state is doing or going through and what health experts are telling them, what does that pressure look like? How does it manifest?
Well, I think today the president brought together teachers, healthcare leaders. We all reflected on what I believe is the overwhelming opinion of the American people, that we got to get our kids back to school. And so today was very much about the president doing like he is want to do, is focusing public attention on this important need. But I must tell you, whether it be the American Association of Pediatrics that put out a statement last week about the importance of classroom learning, what we're hearing from educators and parents around America, that we can't let our kids fall behind academically, but also, you know, Brett, you're a parent, you understand that it's far beyond academics that millions of families rely on our local schools. Many of our children that struggle with emotional challenges or disabilities, they receive those services at school. Add into that nutrition, add into that other ways that we serve our kids. It's absolutely essential that we get back to school, and the president's going to continue to focus effort on that, but also work with our governors to see those plans implemented. The one point that we made today with governors on our conference call, Brett, was as the CDC has issued renewed guidance last week on how we can safely operate our schools, we wanted to make it clear, we don't want the federal government to be the reason why you don't reopen your local school.
Yeah.
We want to work with local officials, school officials, governors in states around the country to find a way to safely reopen our schools. And we believe that we can do that for most of the country.
Mr. Vice President, I think there's unity that parents want their kids back to school.
Yeah.
I do think that you hear that no matter the ideology, the political ideology. But do you believe, as the president said today, that Democrats want to keep schools closed for political reasons? You talk to these governors, Democrats and Republicans.
Well, look, let me leave the governors out of it for just a second and say they're, you know, when we hear some word about teachers' unions beginning already to say that they're not going to be willing to come back in some jurisdictions around the country, look, we all ought to be working together on this. I mean, as I said at the top, to open up America, we've got to open up America's schools. It's absolutely essential. I mean, I didn't even mention the fact that, you know, the academic well-being, the health and well-being of our kids is of paramount importance. But let's remember working families. Let's remember single parents. I mean, for people to be able to go back to work full-time this fall, we've got to have these schools up and running and working. And so what the president made it clear today, shot across the bow, anybody that wants to play politics on this thing is on fair notice that we're not going to put up with it. And I really believe that the overwhelming majority of the American people, of families, of educators all know we can get back to school, we can get back to school safely, K through 12, higher education, and our White House Coronavirus Task Force is going to continue to work very closely with Republican and Democrat governors to get that done.
Well, let's hope it happens. Today, the administration just pulled out of the World Health Organization. Not surprisingly, Joe Biden put out a tweet saying he would join it if he gets elected on the first day. But your fellow Republican, Lamar Alexander, chairman of the Senate Health Committee, put out this statement moments ago saying, "I disagree with the president's decision. Certainly, there needs to be a good, hard look at mistakes the World Health Organization might have made in connection with the coronavirus. But the time to do that is after the crisis has been dealt with, not in the middle of it. Withdrawing U.S. membership could, among other things, interfere with clinical trials that are essential to the development of vaccines, which citizens of the United States, as well as others in the world, need. Is now the right time to be doing this move?"
Well, it's absolutely the right time to notify Congress. With all due respect to Senator Alexander's view, the World Health Organization let the world down. By not informing the United States and the wider world of this pandemic as it began in China, as giving ill-fated advice in January and February, there have to be consequences to this. But look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not surprised Joe Biden wants to keep us roped into another international organization. I mean, Joe Biden actually condemned President Trump's actions when he suspended all travel from China at the end of January. You know, the fact that the president did that, I can tell you firsthand, Brett, that bought our nation invaluable time to reinvent testing, to spin up hundreds of millions of personal protective equipment and supplies to begin the process of pursuing medicines, therapeutics, and vaccines. If Joe Biden would have had his way, we literally would have had tens of millions of more Chinese coming into our country and spreading the pandemic and putting more and more Americans at risk. So, right decision on the WHO. Joe Biden would have made the wrong decision in January.
Apologize for the delay. I want to talk to you about China in just a minute. But just to wrap up the coronavirus, and you lead this task force. Obviously, the numbers are going up. The president wants us to focus on death rate, and we do, and I'll mention that in a minute. The administration critics say the president constantly downplays the seriousness of COVID-19, and they say he speaks in optimism, not reality. Take a listen to this.
We have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless.
We have to start at the basics and level with people. Suggesting that it's not dangerous is in itself a dangerous message.
Vice President Tom Bossert obviously served in the administration with you. Health experts say it's just not the case that only 1% of cases, COVID cases, that they're dangerous. It's more than that. So is there a messaging problem here with the virus?
Well, look, the American people know President Trump is an optimist. He believes in this country, but he also believes the American people deserve to have the whole story. I mean, the reality is, because of what the president did in suspending all travel to China, we were able to stand up a national response that has saved hundreds of thousands and perhaps even millions of American lives. We have rising cases right now along the South. Brett, I was in Texas and Arizona and Florida last week, and the good news is as we told governors again today, we have the resources to support all the testing that they need. We have new therapeutic medicines like remdesivir that have been distributed all across the country, and we have literally tens of millions of personal protective equipment supplies in reserves, even though I heard from the governors that I personally met with that the PPE effort by the national government has been so strong that the hospitals all across the Sun Belt that are seeing rising cases have more than enough PPE. What they did request of us, and the president authorized, was us to send additional doctors and nurses. We're in the process of doing that in all 4 of the largest states that have been impacted so far, and we'll do it in any other states that request it. But what the president wants the American people to know is that our national response, whether it be testing, whether it be PPE, whether it be the supplies and the medicines, has saved American lives. More than 2 months ago, Brett, we were losing 2,500 Americans a day. And there was a day just recently where we only lost 250 Americans. That's
right.
a 90% reduction in fatalities. So, it's a credit to the American people, to all the sacrifices they've made, to our healthcare workers, but ultimately it's a credit to our national response, which has secured one of the lowest mortality rates in the world.
Right. Now, you talk about mortality. Dr. Fauci said today that it's a false narrative to take comfort in the lower rate of death because there are so many things very dangerous about this disease. Don't get yourself into false complacency. You are right about the mortality rates, but some experts are saying they drag behind with the cases going up, that the death rates, well, let's hope not, but they may follow. Here, Dr. Fauci also said that state and local governments should mandate mask wearing, especially if there's an outbreak there. Do you agree with that recommendation?
Well, what we agree with is whatever state and local officials determine is appropriate for their area. I mean, from the very beginning, President Trump has made it clear that we're going to support our governors, we're going to support local health officials in taking the steps that they deem are most appropriate. But back to Dr. Fauci, who I've worked with very closely now for 4 months. You know, I can assure you there is no complacency in the administration, and the president isn't referring to the lowest mortality rate in the world as a reason for complacency. He wants the American people to know that we have made progress combating this pandemic because of all the sacrifices they've made, and we're going to continue to make sure that states across this country, particularly across the Sun Belt, have the resources and the supplies to do everything in their power with those incredible healthcare workers in those hospitals to keep those losses low. Again, the lowest in the world by several measures. It's a credit to the American people, and we are not going to relent in our effort to make sure that our states have the testing resources to identify people, have the PPE to render health care, have the extraordinary medicines like remdesivir, like the steroid treatment, like convalescent plasma, that are really bringing real relief and restoring health to Americans.
Mr. Vice President,
we owe it to the American people to give them the whole story. And while you see cases rising, and frankly, some in the media want to focus exclusively on rising cases, the American people deserve to understand that we are making progress in this pandemic. It's because of all that they've done, and we're going to make sure every state and every community that has rising cases and rising positivity rates has everything they need to meet the moment.
Mr. Vice President, I wanted to give you time to talk about that. Your shot just dropped out for a second. If you wouldn't mind, I do want to ask you about China.
Sure.
Do you have a second on the other side of this break?
You bet.
Okay. We'll be back with the Vice President of the United States after this. Again, joined by the Vice President of the United States. Mr. Vice President, thank you for sticking around. On China, Secretary of State Pompeo said you all are considering the banning of this Chinese-owned app, TikTok. The FBI director spoke out very aggressively with me and then gave a speech this week about China. You've spoken out a couple of times aggressively about China. Is China our enemy?
Well, there's no question China is a strategic competitor with.
Lost the feed there from the Vice President. Let's see if we reestablish this connection. Don't think we have him up. Mr. Vice President, can you hear me? Okay, we'll try to reestablish that connection. Oh, here we go. Sorry for the interruption, Mr. Vice President. You were saying on China.
Well, no one's been tougher on China than President Donald Trump, Brett. I mean, from very early on, this president stood strong to reset an imbalanced trading relationship that previous administrations allowed to develop in a way that when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China. The president stood strong. He also made it clear that we're going to defend our strategic interest in the region. 2 aircraft carriers in the South China Sea as we speak is evidence of our commitment to continue to remain an Asian Pacific power and preserve freedom of navigation. But I must tell you that whether it be the stand on Huawei or what we're currently considering with TikTok, this president also made it clear that we are going to preserve the national security interests of the United States of America from being compromised by the Chinese Communist Party. And so these entities, whether it be Huawei and perhaps even TikTok, that represent a threat to the privacy and to the security of the country, will continue to take a strong stand.
I want to end with this, turning to topics that the president brought up this week. Did NASCAR make the right move banning the Confederate flag?
Well, let me say that we respect the right of private organizations to make the decisions that they deem appropriate for their organization and for their fan base. But at the end of the day, the president, as he said again today, he believes in freedom of speech. We'll always stand for that for every American. But I must tell you that being a part of an administration that saw the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded for African Americans, that we heard again today at our education summit, has made historic investments in historically black colleges and universities, working to open up those schools and all of our schools around America as we speak, expanding opportunity zones. I think people, whether it be African Americans or any American, looks at the record of this administration and knows that this is a president who is committed to being president for all of the American people and to seeing all of the American people live the American dream.
I guess the state of Mississippi removed the Confederate symbol from its flag, and Republicans in that state said, like Roger Wicker, it was the right thing to do. It's a symbol that more and more represents a day in the past that we don't want to celebrate. And some of those Republicans thought there was a disconnect, at least in what was tweeted out by the president. You're saying there's not?
Well, there's not, and we fully respect the decision made by the people of Mississippi going forward. And quite apart from the whole issue of the Confederate flag, I just think it's the question of, as the president said at Mount Rushmore, we're going to defend the great, long, storied history of this country. We have been on a relentless journey toward a more perfect union. We went through a terrible civil war. 600,000 Americans died on both sides to end slavery. We saw the advance in my lifetime of the civil rights movement at great cost, and we're going to continue to celebrate all of the ideals of this country, the contributions of every American of every race and creed and background, and this president, in a very real sense, I promise you, is going to continue to defend America and defend America's great traditions against those who want to tear down statues, who want to erase our history. We believe that we can learn from our history, we can move forward together, and that's how we're going to have a more united United States of America.
Mr. Vice President, we really appreciate your time, your extra time. Thank you for sticking around, and we'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Brett.